Hello and welcome to my channel. I just want to make this brief. I don't know if you guys have been reading the description or anything, but you can do subscriber submissions. I do allow people to do that. So if you want to do that, my email is listed below in the description box. You can also comment below some stories. I'll be liking and replying to comments daily, posting almost regularly. Just stuff like that. If you want to request a specific creepypasta for me to read, I can do that. It's just a whole little conversation with the subscribers, if you get what I'm saying. So if you can do that, that would be great. And let's get on to the video. Today we're going to be reading a creepypasta called Will You Come Play With Me, or Sally for short. So if you want to listen to it, please continue on. I never wanted to reveal my story, but it has to be done. It's been so long and nobody's known. But now I confide in you, the reader, to read my story and attempt to comprehend the horrors I experienced. My fingers stutter and shake and tears cascade down my cheeks as I try to type this, but I warn you now, what you are reading cannot be unread. It was just an ordinary night in my apartment. I was tired. The days at the office had been so stressful lately, and I looked forward to the quiet release of sleep. It always seemed to make everything better, but this was different. The wind seemed ominous, the sky seemed darker, and I relaxed in my chair and watched my favorite sitcoms before bed. I saw what appeared to be a strange silhouette standing outside my window. I focused my full sight on what I thought was there. Nothing, just darkness. I figured I was just overtired and a little bit too much work for today. That's all. I finished watching my show and returned to my bed as I tried my best to sleep. I heard the door at the end of my bedroom creak. I dismissed it, too tired to get myself worked up over nothing. I then got the sense of something watching me. I tried to shake it off. I just wanted to sleep. Finally, I heard something breathe heavily and slowly. At first I thought it was me, and then I was just psyching myself out, so I held my breath for a moment. It wasn't me. I jolted upward from my bed and opened my eyes. I became frozen as I saw at the foot of my bed a young girl with long black hair around the age of 6 in a white nightgown. She stared at me with unblinking eyes and a wide smile. She had deep cuts covering her face, and her hands that hung at her sides were covered in crimson. We both sat there and stood and stared at each other for a good moment until she let out a horrifying, inhuman scream. At that moment, I tried to race out the door, but she leapt on me, digging her nails into my face, her dark black eyes inches away from mine, screaming all the way. The screaming became so deafening, and I soon lost my balance and hit my head on the table next to me. I fell unconscious. I woke up in what appeared to be an empty basement. My clothes remained on, except for my shirt. I struggled to find my balance. My head was covered in dry blood. I looked at my arms. There were cuts all down them. Writing down words, I found them, and the words read, "Will you play with me?" It was also written on both of my sides. I gazed in the room in horror, and I found an iron door with blood seeping at the base. I slowly made my way there. There was no sign of the girl, though I feared she may be behind the door. Despite my fear, I had to go in. I had to. What I saw was horrifying. Bodies laid across in the wide room and all to the stairwell on the opposite corner. Men, women, and children, all of them laying still, cuts on their arms and legs similar to mine. Read, "Will you play with me?" Except these victims had something I didn't. I looked at a nearby woman in horror. She laid on her back, her stomach split open. As I came closer, what came to my was a large toy fire truck shoved in her entrails. I choked back vomit and backed away. A man lying against the wall had metal jacks stuck into both of his eyes. His skull had caved in, and what lay next to him was a broken baseball bat. snapped in half within a pool of blood. A young boy lays lifeless in the very middle. His mouth was wide open, and sticking out of it was the beginning of a toy car track. It had been shoved down his throat. His chest was cut open, and his heart lay next to his body. In place of his heart were dismantled pieces of a doll. I lost my control and vomited. I cried for a moment, but then the thought struck me. Where's the girl? I didn't think this wanting to know where she was, of course. I thought very briefly before noticing the stairwell that stood at the corner of the room. I started walking towards it, and then I stopped. Something behind me was breathing heavily. I turned around, and there stood the girl. After having stood in the corner, I waited, and the entire time I was examining the bodies. Then she said in a high-pitched voice that pierced my ears with terror, "Will you play with me?" She began screaming. I turned to run away, but she was on me, knife-sharp nails driving into my back and neck. I struggled and eventually threw off from me and onto the ground. I ran to the door, but it slammed shut. I banged on it, cursed, blood running down my back. It would not open. She was on me again. I elbowed her face, and she dove her nails into my back. I managed to push her off and turn around. As she lunged, I caught her. Her big, black eyes, inches away from mine, her nails plunged into my face, her screams deafening my ears. She raised one hand, smiling ear to fucking ear, and her hand plunged down on my eyes. Everything went black. I woke up in a hospital, bandages covering my body, including both of my eyes. A police officer stood in my room, speaking with the doctor. Then I saw I was awake and smiled. They informed me that I was not the only survivor of the mass murder, and that they suspected a middle-aged man had been captured. I told them about the girl. They said no girl was found at the scene. They didn't believe me. They told me I should rest. 2 weeks passed, and I was cleared to leave. As I exited the hospital, permanently scarred on my arms, back, face, and sides, I passed the waiting truck room. It had some toys lying on the ground. The game Jacks, a toy fire truck, a doll, and a toy car track. Sitting with these toys was a small girl with long, black hair. She wore a white gown. She looked me up and down and smiled widely. In a voice that pierced every cut on my body, she said, "Will you play with me?"